What is a digital citizen? Well, we all know what a citizen is. It's a person who is part of something such as a nation or a state or a city or whatever that might be. According to dictionary.com, it is a person who develops the skills and knowledge to effectively use the internet and other digital technology, especially in order to participate responsibly in social and civic activities. In my own words, it's the idea that a person who uses the internet and an online digital platform logically and with sound mind, making actions that are responsible and fruitful in everyday use for themselves and others in a virtual space. Hence the words digital citizen. Safety online also incorporates with being a digital citizen. Being a digital citizen is how we use ourselves online and how we conduct ourselves in that online space. To be safe online is in itself a conundrum when you look at the online space as a whole. Simply searching on the internet how to stay safe online has a lot of different takes and inputs on what it means to be safe online and what one can do. With this idea and concept of being safe online, there are some tips and tricks to ensure one has a safe experience while using the internet. To stay safe online, prioritize strong passwords. Enable two-factor authentication where you can. Be cautious about what you download and share. And be wary of suspicious links and emails. Always keep your software updated and be mindful of your online presence. A more detailed breakdown of this is, first of all, protecting your accounts, such as using two-factor authentication, using a strong password, making sure to save your password somewhere smart like a key or something elsewhere, and changing your passwords frequently. Be mindful of your online activity. What are you searching? Is that website actually a good website or is it just a scam asking you for personal information? Protect your devices and your network. Be careful what you allow on your devices because some of those links can lead to malware. Protect your personal information. There is nowhere on the internet that you should be giving out your personal information. It's probably a scam. Be aware of online scams and threats. Some of them seem fine, some of them seem authentic. They're probably not. Having an online presence is how you conduct yourselves online with whether it's with people, a website, whatever that might be. Ensuring one's presence is safe online. Ensuring one's presence to be safe online starts with how one presents themselves online. Someone can claim to have good intentions, but later change their mind. We don't know that person. We don't know what they're going to change their mind about, including ourselves. We can change our minds as we use the internet. Be careful and identify online threats and harm and report it. Online threats can only get dealt with if you report it. Never give out personal information. Be careful what you post online. Things that we post online can hurt people in more ways than one. Ensure you have good intentions. If you don't, get off, take a break, then come back with a clear mind. Try to stay away from AI generated websites and hooks that are made to draw in people, then cause discomfort or worse outcomes for unwilling participants, such as losing money, losing your identity, all that stuff. It's easy to get swept away. Use common sense. Cyberbullying. Cyberbullying is a big issue, especially as technology advances and more people are drawn to the internet space. It is a increasing danger in today's community. Being vigilant and reporting cyberbullying can help ensure the online community in which you are taking part in is safe from people who would break those community standards. But what is cyberbullying exactly? Cyberbullying is the use of technology to harass, threaten, embarrass, or target another person. Online threats and mean, aggressive, or rude texts, tweets, posts, messages all count. So does posting personal information, pictures, or videos designed to hurt or embarrass someone else. Cyberbullying can also include photos, messages, or pages that don't get taken down even after the person has been asked to do so. So, in other words, it's anything that gets posted online and it's meant to hurt, harass, or upset someone else. Cyberbullying is never okay. Report it. It's the best thing you can do. Compromised safety. How to check for compromised safety. Anything you do, anything you see, anything you interact with through identity theft, data breaches, malware and viruses, phishing, scam emails, fake websites, online scams, romance scams, inappropriate content, cyberbullying, faulty privacy settings. How can you help? Spread the word about online safety. It is smart to be safe online. Not everybody is. We might know of someone who's been scammed. We might know of someone who's lost their identity because it's been taken online. The best thing we can do is help other people don't experience the same thing. Make sure you are using a strong secure internet connection. Choose strong passwords and change them often. Don't use the same password for 2 different accounts. I've done that. I've had it come bite me later on. Enable multi-factor authentication when able. Discord uses 2-factor authentication. I strongly recommend it. Keep software and operating systems updated. They always release updates in their updates that help to prevent viruses and things like that as best it can. Check that websites look and feel reliable. Some of them aren't. That's the idea of them. Review privacy settings and privacy policies. This goes along with if you see something that might break the standard or the policy, say something. Be careful of suspicious links. They look legit. They probably are not. Make sure your devices are secure by using a secure web browser, VPN, whatever that might be. Be careful of suspicious links. Honestly, you don't know if they're suspicious. If you're not expecting anything, don't click on it. Make sure your devices are secure. Again, using secure browsers. Back up your data regularly. That way you don't lose whatever you're working on, such as a college paper, whatever that might be. Be careful what you download. Some things that you download that you might think are legit might come with a virus that can completely crash and kill your computer. Be careful what you post and where. Be careful who you meet online. Some of them are AI generated. They're not real. Some people have malicious intent. They're not real. Double check your online information. Close unused accounts because your information could still be on that account. Even though you may think it's safe, it's not. Use a good antivirus and keep it updated. I use this myself. It helps to keep out viruses and other things that might harm my computer. And again, spread the word. Thank you.
So, model security for the model digital citizen. Now, whilst there isn't a precise order of operations for this PowerPoint presentation, we will largely be focusing on the following themes: a basic overview of the problems, the different threats that arise from these problems, including threats to the individual overall, including from malware, data, social engineering, and the web in general. And through this, we will also discuss some specific mitigations or controls and other things to remember which can be used to manage these threats. Now, much of this report here, much of this presentation is drawn from a report from the European Union Agency for Cybersecurity, and recent changes in the world regarding politics and ideology unfortunately continue to drive cyber risks to you as an individual and the data various services retain about your online personas. To understand what we should change, we need to understand where the risk is for us as individual digital citizens and the threats we are attempting to mitigate. One report which was immensely helpful for this presentation, as I mentioned, was this report from the European Union Agency for Cybersecurity. By the way, if you ever have a few hours to spare, it is a very good 130-page report. So if you want to have a look at it, you can find it online. They reported that several different core technologies and methodologies are increasingly being used to facilitate a variety of threats at both organizational and individual targets. It has never been more important to protect your identity online and carefully manage which services you use. Overall, whilst not yet significant enough to warrant the development of mitigations for individuals, they noted an uptake in the use of AI-powered tools, as you would expect, for the support of existing attack paradigms and unique misinformation-related threats. State-based actors in particular are well positioned to utilize these advancements. Consider Russia, China, or other non-Western nations. However, they can be included too for political or ideological purposes. Also note that geopolitical risks also impact upon the severity and frequency of cyber threats, as tensions herein tend to cause state actors to engage more prolifically, sometimes with more real-world impact to civilians. It should also be noted that activists also are affected by politics as their main driving force, so unfortunately it's not something that can be solely confined to state actors. The best defense in this regard is usually to limit online presence and carefully control the data you present online. Unfortunately, organizational defense remains one of the few methods against some state-based actors and other well-resourced actors like advanced persistent threat groups, which I'm not defining here, but just so you know, basically places with millions and billions of dollars. Right. I've just lost my place in my notes. Right. It should also be noted that that hacktivists, that is, activists with the appropriate skills for hacking, which can be diverse and wide-ranging, are also heavily influenced by geopolitics, as I mentioned, and current indications suggest that many hacktivist groups are engaged in both sides of the Russo-Ukrainian war and Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Whilst this survey does not promote or endorse a discussion of political matters, it is important to note that everyone's collective risk to cyber threats inherently is affected by such matters, as is the universal nature of the internet and other core technologies. The European Union Agency for Cybersecurity broke down the threats by their type for incidents which were reported across the late 2023 and early 2024 periods. Largely, the threats areas which impact digital users depend on their profile. Are they a CEO, important or public figure, or just the average person? In lieu of defining such precision for everyone here today, we'll presume you're an average person. In this context, data, social engineering, and malware are the most relevant threats. These will be explored momentarily. First up, malware, or malicious software, represents any malicious code or logic which intends to perform an unauthorized process or set of actions that has an adverse impact on the confidentiality, integrity, or availability of a system. They are usually deployed as a virus, worm, or Trojan. Whilst the precise nature of these deployment mechanisms aren't in scope for this presentation, a hacker's purpose dictates how they will act. Thus, more importantly for our defense is ensuring we know what the hacker could be after in our systems or services. Generally, the purpose of a hacker can be summed up as one of four distinct purposes: to steal data, make a statement, to act, or to extort the user, usually a combination of all four. The UNISA report highlights that hackers are iterating on the traditional info stealer design, including with respect to concealment and access. The longer they can go undetected on your system, the more information they can steal. Further, malware developers are also investing more time in the cat and mouse, or whack-a-mole game, in my opinion, of developing innovative methods of delivery. This means that only being vigilant over known methods of intrusion may become less effective over time, and this poses a very big risk to those on the outskirts of cybersecurity, as you are not inherently well versed in the field. Finally, an interesting trend which has been picking up some steam over the past half decade has been malware as a service operations. This means that potentially sophisticated malware and various delivery mechanisms are placed in the hands of unskilled operators for a price. This naturally lowers the skill barrier for engaging in criminal activity, likely expanding the user base and thus increasing the risk for all citizens of the world. Next up is social engineering. Social engineering refers to all techniques aimed at talking a target into revealing specific information or performing a specific action for illegitimate reasons. It comes in many flavors, including phishing, smishing, vishing, pretexting, business email compromise, and a recent addition, quishing. There's a lot of ishings in there, but they're all important. Largely, phishing is one of the most common, using open source intelligence about a person or organization to get them to share sensitive information, for instance passwords. When a specific target is involved, this is called spear phishing. Smishing, however, is phishing, but for SMS, i.e. text messages, usually impersonating a reputable company or trustworthy actor like a government agency or organization. Vishing, that's with a V, is also phishing, but instead the impersonation occurs over voice, so for example via a call or some other form of mechanism like that. AI has made this worse with deepfakes and voice generators being readily available. In fact, training only takes about 10 seconds of good quality vocal audio for a fairly good approximation. So I would actually recommend that when you pick up a call, be very brief in your initial hello and wait for the other end to tell you who they are first. Because that's the only way you're going to defend yourself from being essentially fished out of your own voice. Next up, pretexting. It involves the creation of a pretext or scenario in which the target may more readily hand over information to the hacker, generally through impersonation and other social engineering factors, including building trust and manipulation. Next up, business email compromise. It involves the creation of a pretext, like pretexting, but instead focusing on that of a fellow employee, acting on pre-existing email chains for authenticity. So even if you know or should know who a person is, always confirm in real life first before acting on anything in an email. It should also be mentioned, however, that these aren't just risks to individuals in high places. According to UNISA's report, 42.76% of reported incidents targeted the general public, not companies. That is a monstrously large minority, especially with regards to vishing, which has already seen a 60% increase since 2023, according to the US-based Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA. ENISA warns that the inclusion of AI synthetic voice and other factors, and by the way, this is most certainly an underestimation of the true scale of the problem. Hold on. I don't know where that sentence came from. Yes, sorry. ENISA warns that the inclusion of AI synthetic voice and other factors may worsen this statistic over time as more criminals gain access to this technology. Combine this with alternative and asynchronous measures like phishing through job adverts, and you have a large security weakness to cover. It should also be mentioned that in recent times, individuals, cybercriminals rather, from China have been caught trying to use ChatGPT to make their own malware, or to make them malware, which was thankfully caught and blocked by OpenAI. But it just shows the weaknesses as well in current technologies in preventing this. Moving on. Threats against data assets. Threats against data aim to block access to data and manipulate, i.e. poison, data to interfere with system behavior. A data breach is defined in the GDPR as any breach of security leading to the accidental or unlawful destruction loss, alteration, or unauthorized disclosure of, or access to personal data transmitted, stored, or otherwise processed. Uh, yeah. Technically speaking, threats against data can be mainly classified as a data breach or data leak. Though often used as interchangeable concepts, they entail fundamentally different foundations that mostly lie in how they happen. The former is intentional, the latter is not. Despite this, both represent an unacceptable state where your confidentiality as a digital citizen is at risk, and if such interference causes the availability or integrity of your personal citizenship data to be lost, then your citizenship, so to speak, has been violated. This is important on several related grounds. First, consider all of the private information which could be used to identify you, or through that, access your accounts. Banks still rely partly on known secrets, such as the street of your first home, childhood nickname, etc., to validate your identity. Also, that's called a security question, by the way. Also consider how much of your day-to-day is tied up with online services. Even government is progressively being digitized in most countries. Some, however, well, let's just call it ambitious for those certain countries. Thus, protecting your data is of immense importance. ENISA reports that this is not for naught either, as 14.88% of incidents related to data incidents were reported to affect the general public. ENISA also highlights that identity or credential theft and extortion remain core end goals, with threats mostly targeting the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom. Speaking more broadly, AI again enters the conversation. To cut an exceptionally long story short, any information you share with a chatbot or other AI should never include private or identifying information. Unintentional disclosures of corporate information to a chatbot, for instance, still constitutes a data leak. Further, one should be very careful with any information outputted by a model, as it is very easy to manipulate. If you want more information on these attack vectors, please feel free to strike up a conversation with me. After all, it is the subject of my master's at the moment. So, how do we protect ourselves? There are many ways, and I'll state plenty here, but I'll also just dive a bit deeper on a few core points I feel as vitally important to the protection of your digital citizenship online. In terms of malware, the simplest solution is usually the easiest. Don't install anything you don't need, and limit applications and their permissions if you're able to. ENISA found that so-called dual-purpose software, like remote monitoring and management software, like AnyDesk for instance, are often abused by miscreants to do their deeds, to blend in with authorized traffic, right? This is because these softwares, generally speaking, have remote administration capabilities and remote desktop privileges, thus it's expected for it to be used in that capacity. Malware also tends to abuse vulnerabilities in software for their initial access and command execution. Thus, limiting the number of applications necessarily limits the possibility of an unknown zero-day or flaw for exploit. Next, ensure your antivirus is up to date. This includes your operating system for those of you on Windows 10. Overall, only one, and for those on Windows, that is Windows Defender, antivirus solution should be needed to protect your PC. Due to the way that most antiviruses are programmed these days, they have limited ability to detect and handle zero days. This is because of the nature of a zero day, which by definition is unknown. An exploit made around said zero day may not trigger the behavioral detection rules established by the manufacturer of your antivirus, that is. Thus, trying to use another antivirus to cover the gap is unlikely to work and just expand your attack surface. Next, validate the source of any download. If the developer has provided a certificate or integrity key, verify it against official sources. Usually, this should be as simple as computing the hash of the downloaded binary and comparing it to official sources. If you don't know what that is, I suggest you follow the links below and have a look. Next, make sure to review your antivirus's configuration. Many, like Defender, have options for different kinds of protection against malware. Common ones include memory protection and network protection, among others. And these settings can be enabled and disabled depending on your computer's unique capabilities, and what you use it for, really. Um, okay. And then next, attempt to limit your usage of Bluetooth and wireless signals in public. Many vulnerabilities have been discovered in the Bluetooth and 902.11 wireless standards, some of which cannot be patched due to backwards compatibility. Any form of external connection can be a risk, so always be vigilant. Finally, many malware strains take advantage of the end user environment to undertake their activities. This is called living off the land, or LOTL. Use of the command line, PowerShell, programming interpreters, and runtimes thereby facilitate the execution. If you are knowledgeable enough, and I can't stress this enough, if you are knowledgeable enough, disabling or removing unnecessary elements therein provides stronger protection against misuse, because it's simply not going to be there. Now, moving on to social engineering, the focus here mainly is ensuring one does not get phished and has protections in place in case they do. Thus, the first few are very generic. First, using a password manager ensures that you cannot be phished for your password, as it would only be offered as a suggestion for autofill if and when the requesting website matches the required rule set, or cryptographic proof. Next, use multi-factor authentication. As I've already explained in previous boot camps, some multi-factor authentication is better than others, and we need to be aware of which ones are more secure for our purposes as a digital citizen. As you may be aware from the previous bootcamp, I believe it was session 1, I specifically pointed out that hardware and software security keys, as well as one-time passwords, are generally fairly secure, and please do avoid SMS two-factor authentication. If you would like me to do a full presentation on the precise reason as to why, do hit me up and I'll make sure I make that for you. Moving on. Be aware of your operating environment. If you have tasks on the go, who should be contacting you about those tasks, and what proof from them do you need about their identity or capabilities to use or manipulate that information? If you're in a corporate environment, this should be fairly simple, but in a personal setting, you may need to do some extra work. Now, moving on to data asset breaches, in other words, data asset protection. The best protection is simply to not be involved. Limit what information you provide online to businesses, and what I suggest, most importantly, is that you do not use tools and services like Incogni, because fundamentally they need to know the information they're looking for in order to do their job. So it sort of defeats the purpose. Now, if you were to use them to remove other services, or indeed from advertisement, there may be a use case there, but in terms of getting your information out of the hands of businesses, I would suggest you do not use Incogni. Instead, go through each of your accounts manually, delete it, maybe use Incogni once, and then make sure you delete that too. Secondly, use compartmentalization. We'll discuss this on a later slide, so I'm not going to delve too deeply on this. Next, understand what data is truly private versus just identifiable, because as you may be aware, a phone number isn't exactly meant to be private. It's supposed to be used for communication. And its purpose is of immense importance, because, well, how do we contact you without this information? Of course, there's an argument to be made for solicitation versus unsolicited phone calls, in which case restriction may be warranted. But to say that it is a private piece of information, no, not really. Finally, use a single sign-on provider to centralize access control and information about yourself. For instance, Google, Facebook, or many of the other ones, I believe, is it X that's now also included as one on some websites, maybe? I believe Yahoo was also one in the olden days. But regardless, the purpose here is to ensure that only one account has your information, and then not licensed, but delegated out if and when it's required at your permission. Right? Now, as I said, a single sign-on provider can also be used on many websites as a form of authentication, meaning that it may be better to make use of this to log into untrusted sites. Because there's no extra password or sensitive information given in the exchange, it may be more private than making a random account. Of course, this depends on the underlying structure of the single sign-on solution as to what information they reveal by default, but hopefully you can find one which is relatively private and secure. Now, just a few notes and things to remember. Can 2FA or multi-factor authentication be relied upon? Yes, but only when all three factors are secure. That means a strong and unique password, a protected and unique possession like a security key of some description, or an access badge, cell phone, etc., and a private and unique biometric. As I mentioned before, not all MFA is equivalent. And the best case for this is long and complex password, a hardware or software security key, and a fingerprint or iris for biometric authentication. The purpose for MFA is to ensure that you present all three factors to your authentication solution, because that way it is basically the most secure you can be. It should be noted that in recent times, ANISA has reported on an increase of incidents regarding MFA bombing. That is a process of a hacker repeatedly prompting the victim to approve their access requests via MFA. Eventually, most incidents resolve with the hacker gaining access. What's important to note here is that this can only happen if and only if they have your password and username correct. Thus, having a strong password already acts as mitigation for this new form of social engineering. But also remember, regarding hardware security keys, that hardware security keys are still hardware and software security keys are still software, and they still have inherent risks. Both forms of possession in this case need adequate protection as well. For example, I do have a set of YubiKeys, but I am aware that they already have a vulnerability in them because they're the original version, which needs to be fixed, mind you. But so long as I've got careful control over where they are and who's holding them, I will be fine. That's important to note. Now, I also want to quickly make note of what a digital persona is, because I did mention this, and I think it's very important for the concept of compartmentalization. So, an important thing to recognize when operating online is this idea of a digital persona, especially if you're an EU citizen, but also applicable to all other nations of the world. You have some semblance of right or freedom to your privacy online. This right grants agency in deciding if, when, and how information about your personhood is conveyed to third parties. Privacy is seen as both a right and freedom across the Western world, largely as a personal assay of perceived boundaries of public and private life. In the modern day of technology and the internet, what has been seen as in the public sphere has expanded over time, naturally shrinking the space of the private self. For the purpose of our discussion here on cybersecurity today, the important thing to note is that we have control over the information we put online, and that is our first line of defense, albeit a minimal one. As usually, defense through obscurity is often of limited effect when you are required to share your information, for instance, an email address, billing address, or other sensitive information, to go about with daily life. In some respects, details like phone numbers, email addresses, and other contact information were not intended to be classified as private information, but the GDPR, of course, decides to go on above and beyond in this regard. IP addresses as well, they are meant for communication. I just wanted to mention that because some people treat them as the be-all or end-all of security. Someone knowing your IP doesn't inherently make you less secure. But, however, we need a way to limit access to the information that we do share to ensure only services or individuals we deem appropriate can utilize the private information for approved purposes. Digital personas extend upon the idea of compartmentalization. You share some specific information with one service provider and a different subset with another. Of course, these can be repudiated if said services allow so publicly, but that is usually at your discretion. Each account you hold online qualifies as a persona, as it is a subset of private or public information about your person. Managing these can become difficult as the number may grow over time. Thus, a single sign-on solution like Google or Facebook offers both strong access controls and usually a reasonable privacy legislation compliance framework, while limiting the number of accounts you actively have to manage, as they are all co-signed underneath the same root of security. Right. Thank you for listening to my presentation. Are there any questions?